You know that feeling, right? You cram for a test, you feel like you've got it all down, and then poof, the one piece of information you really need just vanishes from your brain. It's so frustrating. Well, today, we're going to fix that. We're about to unlock a seriously powerful technique to make anything you learn actually stick for good. Yeah, it happens to all of us. It feels like information just slips right through our fingers. It's kind of like your brain is a bucket. And, sometimes it feels like that bucket's got a leak. You pour all this knowledge in, but it just slowly drips out. So, what if I told you there's a way to patch those leaks for good? The answer, the master key, if you will, is something called mnemonics. It's this awesome, time-tested system that uses patterns, letters, and clever associations to basically lock information into your brain. And the best part, it's not about studying harder. It's all about studying smarter.
So here's what we're going to do. We're basically going to build a complete cognitive toolkit together. First, we'll hack some history and borders. Then we'll decode a bit of science and nature. After that, we'll get into ordering society's rules. And to wrap it all up, I'll show you how you can build your own.
Okay, let's dive right in and start building that toolkit. First up, we're going to tackle those things that are just so hard to memorize. Those long lists of names, dates, and places that just feel impossible. So let's start with a classic challenge. How about remembering the major Mughal emperors in chronological order? I know it sounds super daunting, right? But what if the answer was as simple as this one little word, BHJSA? This is a perfect example of how powerful a simple acronym can be. Each letter is a trigger, a little hook for your memory. So you have B for Babur, H for Humayun, A for Akbar, J for Jahangir, S for Shah Jahan, and the final A for Aurangzeb. Boom, an entire dynasty, all in the right order from just one simple word. How cool is that? Okay, let's try another one. This time, let's switch to geography. Quick question for you. Can you name all the Indian states that border Bhutan? It's a tough one, right? Well, once again, the answer is hidden inside a simple four-letter word, S-A-A-B. So let's break that down. You've got S for Sikkim, A for Arunachal Pradesh, another A for Assam, and B for West Bengal. See? Just like that, a pretty complex geographical fact becomes totally unforgettable. It really does start to feel like a superpower, doesn't it? All right, so we've conquered history and geography. Now, let's see how we can use these exact same tools to decode some really dense scientific stuff. I'm talking everything from the vastness of space right down to the tiny building blocks of life. Okay, biology. Trying to remember the whole taxonomical hierarchy, from kingdom all the way down to species, can be a total nightmare, unless you use a fun little sentence like this one. Kids prefer cheese over fried green spinach. It's so simple, right? The first letter of each word gives you the entire sequence perfectly. Kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. What you're doing is creating this vivid, kind of silly image in your mind, and that's what makes a really abstract concept concrete and so much easier to remember. Okay, now for a true classic. I bet you've heard this one. How do you remember all the planets in our solar system in the right order from the sun? Of course, it's my very educated mother just served us noodles. There's a reason this one is so famous. It just works. And this is where you can really see the magic in action. See, our brains are just not wired to remember random lists. We're wired for stories. So when we hear something like, my very educated mother, it creates this little story, a narrative path that our memory can just easily follow all the way through the solar system. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. It's a simple little story that helps us navigate the entire cosmos. All right, let's ramp up the complexity a little bit and look at an example from physics. You often need to remember things called vector quantities, things that have both magnitude and direction. Well, mnemonics are used all over the world, and this really clever one from Hindi, Vishwat Baki, is a perfect example of how you can pack some complex physics into a super simple phrase. So each syllable here becomes a hook for a key physics term. V points to Vistapan, which is displacement. Shu is for Shaveg, or momentum. Va is for veg, or velocity. T is for tovaran, or acceleration. And ball is simply ball, force. It's really interesting, right? Even if you don't know the language, you can hear how it creates this memorable rhythm. It's such an elegant way to pack a ton of data into one short phrase. Okay, for our final set of tools, let's look at how we can use these tricks to remember the more abstract rules and structures that govern our society. things like economic principles, and even constitutional law.
So in economics, there are four fundamental factors of production. These are the basic inputs you need to create pretty much any good or service. So how do you remember them? Well, just think of the basic building block of all life, a cell. It's C for capital, E for entrepreneurship, L for land, and the last L for labor. That's it. Four core economic concepts, all packed neatly into one simple, memorable word. It's just incredibly efficient.
Okay, check this one out. This is a brilliant one for political science. Trying to remember the key features that India's constitution borrowed from Britain, that can be really tricky. But what if I told you the answer was hiding in the name of a famous brand of biscuits? Parle-G. This is a perfect example of one of the core principles of mnemonics. You anchor new, abstract information to something you already know really, really well. In this case, a biscuit. So parl triggers parliamentary government. L reminds you of lawmaking procedures, E stands for the executive, and G covers both general elections and single citizenship. Amazing, right?
So, there you have it. We've built a pretty powerful toolkit together. We've seen how these simple tricks can help us master everything from history to science to law. But the real power, the real magic, happens when you start creating your own.
And honestly, this is the most important takeaway. Using a mnemonic that someone else made is great, don't get me wrong, but creating your own, that's where the real power is. It totally transforms learning from this passive thing where you're just receiving information into an active, creative process. You're not just a student anymore. You become the architect of your own memory. Look, the techniques we've covered today, they are your new secret weapon for learning literally anything. So the only question left is, what's next for you? What complex, fascinating, or challenging topic are you going to conquer? The possibilities are absolutely endless.